Okay. You're stuck with me for hours and hours and hours. I wonder, does anyone have a clock I can borrow, a watch? Because I won't spoil your lunch. Oh, it's there. Fantastic. What a professional setup. I'm not used to that back in Norway. Hi, guys. My name is Julie. I'm from Norway. I live in Norway in the mountains. So I almost got a heat stroke on Monday in Bucharest. Really. I live in the mountains where it's quite cold. But I'm Danish originally. You can't hear that on my dialect, but you would if I spoke Norwegian. I run a small non-profit called Klimakultur, and it's a non-profit in the non-profit meaning of the word, that we don't have any money. So thank you for this assignment, Monica. We really love it. So we work on engaging the culture sector to take climate action. And for this half an hour, I'm going to talk about culture-based climate action, which is kind of a new term. And I'm still learning, and I'm still trying to fit meaning into it. And I would like to invite you into this half an hour to learn more about it and see how far I have come, and maybe you can come as well. So this weekend, I went to the, what do you call the museum? The National Museum. And there was a beautiful exhibition with the Dutch artist called Danielle van Zadelhoff, and she's a modern photographer and artist, and she takes photos in the old-fashioned style. And they were exhibited next to each other, the new photos with the old paintings. And actually I saw it now that this is Barbara Longi, who was a female painter in the 1600th century. So we got some female representation among the old classics. That's great. So I posted one of those photos on Instagram, and Danielle re-grammed me and said, "Hi, and I love your work on climate," she said. And I was like, "Oh my God." And she said, "I'm a grandmother with 5 grandchildren. Let me know if I can do something to help with your climate work." And I was like, "Oh, thank you." So keep in mind that what we are doing here and what we're gathered here to do is to make sure that in 300 years, we can still go to that museum and see the classics and the new classics and maybe Danielle pictures as well. You know, we can, yeah, that's basically why we're here. So I'll get back to this picture, but just to let you know that at the climate convention in Dubai before Christmas, something miraculously, Andy, how do I say it? Oh, I forgot you were Scottish. That doesn't help. Something fantastic happened. There were the first cultural minister meeting at a climate convention, and we'll get back to that. So, culture-based climate action, what is it? Who's doing it? And I'm starting off with a little bit about me. I think that Andy shamed me earlier, you know, as a vegan, and I eat a little bit of meat, and so I just wanted to share a picture of the first time I got shamed by a vegan. And this is 22 years ago. I was head of marketing at EMI Music in Oslo in Norway. And this were the other like EMI bosses and marketing people in the Nordics. And you can also see that the music business were different then, because, yeah, you can tell it was a lot of men. And I wasn't that old, so I was trying to look really old. And this is Paul McCartney, who was playing the Nobel Peace Prize concert. So we were talking about Paul McCartney earlier today, and I was like, yes, I got him in my presentation. So, but the night before, we went out to dinner with the whole crew and the band and everything. And I was eating deer. Do you know what a deer is? It's an animal that lives in the forest. And then Paul McCartney's drummer said to me, he said, "What are you eating?" And I said, "Deer?" And he stood up and he shouted to the whole room, "Oh my God, she's eating Bambi." So and that was the first time I got shamed by a vegan, and I love to get shamed by vegans because they are, of course, right. And I tried to say that, but Bambi is living in the forest and had a great life. It's a good animal welfare meat to eat, and it didn't help. So since then, I've been working a lot with festivals and sustainability and training people on greener touring and all that kind of shit. So let me move on to, this is my brother. His name is Mats. He was one of the first scientists who published in Science and Nature how the climate crisis is affecting animal populations. Normally, I think he just counted a lot of reindeer and musk ox, and that was his job. But in the 90s, he published really groundbreaking climate science. And he became a professor at the university in Svalbard, in Longyearbyen. I was lucky enough to visit him. So this is going to be like the serious part of this, because in 2022, in the summer, my brother Mats, he died suddenly. Heart failure, something. He got found in Longyearbyen and Svalbard. And that was terrible. And I don't know if you remember the summer 2 years ago, how hot it was in Europe. Birds were falling from the sky in the UK and everywhere. It was just heartbreaking. And I went to my brother's funeral in Denmark. And something happened that I didn't expect. And that was, it was heartbreaking to bury my brother because he was 61. And yeah, of course, it's sad. And with his children and, you know, everything. But at his funeral were also many of the world's leading climate scientists, and the Danish climate scientists and biologists and people working with climate change. And they were at the funeral as well because he was working with them. And I was like, can I network at a funeral? I was like, yeah, well. So I started asking them about climate change because I'm a music business person. I don't know that much about anything. And what they told me that afternoon in Copenhagen was heartbreaking because they were all so scared what's happening now. And Andy showed a lot of good slides about it. But they were like, we are nowhere near the system change we need. No one is doing the actions we need to help this. And they were just, no, it was hard. So in one afternoon in Denmark, in the middle of a heat wave, I buried my brother, but I also buried our ecosystems at the same time. And after that, my work changed. And I went back to the mountains and started thinking, okay, I've been working with sustainability and festivals and touring for 10 years in Norway. There have never been so many talking about these issues, never so many seminars and conferences on these matters. And never have we had a worse climate policy in Norway. The government has never given away so many oil licenses as they're doing now. There's never been more money invested in new oil platforms in Norway. So what can we do? And one of the things we can do is to take a look at this bathtub. It's a really groundbreaking piece of work from me. And this is why. If you go into your bath and you see this is happening, what do? You turn it off. Why don't we do that when it comes to the climate crisis? Because what is happening is that we are releasing too much CO2 into the atmosphere. And we are not turning off the faucet at all. And just make it clear that no one wants to turn off the faucet overnight. We don't want to remove all the oil platforms tomorrow. But in Norway, not only do we want to keep the faucet running, we want to open it more because our oil is so green. That's another discussion. And all the things I've been working with in the culture sector is mopping the floor. You know, we are trying to take the train more, and we are trying to do climate adaptation, especially in the cultural heritage sector. There's a lot of climate adaptation. We are just trying to fix down here what is happening up there. And Andy said in his speech that how can we fix the system? And this is what we have to do. We have to fix the system. And we have to start new conversations. And Monica and Monica's boss, thank you for giving a room to start these conversations. And we'll talk more about it over lunch. But it's clear that it's not enough that we only, oh, it's so nice that the artists are doing all these wonderful things that we've seen presented here today. It's amazing that the artist and culture sector is doing so many things on this. But we also have to turn around and say, well, what are you doing? What's the system doing? I can change, can you? So let's see how culture can change the system. Because I needed inspiration and I needed knowledge. And I wasn't getting any of that in Norway. So I went to, well, I didn't went to the Arts Council England, but this is just an example. The Arts Council England, and don't get me, there's many things wrong with, I don't know, Arts Council England or England and the UK on climate issues. But for 12 years, Arts Council England have had an environmental program with amazing results. And it has been run together with an organization called Julie's Bicycle. And every time you see something globally on climate and culture, Julie's Bicycle is most certainly involved in it. So a key learning point from them is that it's not about the numbers, it's about the transition. In Norway, when we talk about climate in the culture sector, we only talk about the numbers. We talk about how the culture sector can reduce the emissions and how we can measure it. That's all we talk about. In the UK, the culture sector, they are measuring and they are reducing, but they're doing 100 times more. And I'll show it to you here. Every year, Julie's Bicycle is releasing a report on their work with the Arts Council England. And go online and check them out if you want more info, because there you can really see the work they're doing. But it's like they have reduced the energy use in the whole culture sector by 25%. And there's a lot of really, really good results you can read up on there. But also, the scale of the program is big. Because they also learned that if the art sector is going to help change the system, you need a lot of different knowledge. So they have webinars, they have climate calculators, they have courses, events, content, a lot of different programs for the entire art sector, but also for the people working in the Arts Council itself. Because it doesn't help if the culture sector change, if the system doesn't change. So Arts Council England are very ambitious on this, and they are also like, we can change as a system, but we can help the culture sector change the system. So we can give them the knowledge to change us. Do you understand? It's very interesting, I think. And they've updated their policies all the time, and this is the newest. And they really want to empower the culture sector to take leadership at a governance level. So they want the culture sector to help change climate policy, which I think is beautiful. And also, all the time, they're talking about climate justice, and we'll get back to that. But that is a focus for Arts Council England. It's knowledge about climate justice because it has to be a base for all the change they are doing. Otherwise, you won't get the system change we need. They also fund a lot of reports, and I'm showing you this, how to stop financing the environmental crisis. And it's very funny for someone placed in Norway to read this, because in there, is a lot of information on how to stop having oil sponsorships, which is big in Norway in the culture. There's also information on how to change your bank, how to change your pension providers, and how to move your money away from fossil fuels, to do divestments. They also made a lot of material on creative climate justice, which we'll get back to in the workshop. Also, they're gathering a lot of information from the culture sector. So if you get funding from the Arts Council England, you have to report on your emissions, but it's not 2,000 questions. It's like the basic of your emissions. But also you have to answer questions which is beyond carbon, like, do you have an ethical sponsorship policy? Like no fossil fuel company sponsorships. So the Arts Council England is actually working to get fossil fuel sponsorships away from the culture sector because it's framing so much of how they work. And for Norwegian, that's also really strange because our state-owned oil company, Equinor, is sponsoring so much of our culture and sports and children and schools and museums and everything. Did you know that our national team on skiing, our youth national team, is called Equinor's national team? They got their own national teams in Norway. It's quite amazing. So what you also have to answer when you're reporting to the Arts Council England on your money is what kind of pension provider you're using as a culture organization. Does not invest in the fossil fuel industry, does not invest in the fossil fuel industry, on your bank information. So there's a lot of really progressive work being done there, which the rest of the world is learning from. One of the most amazing things for me is that Julie's Bicycle and Arts Council England started a creative climate leadership program where we can learn this. And I was lucky enough to attend 2 years ago in 2022. And it was perfect. My brother died, I needed a system change. Okay, I went to this course and I learned a lot about it. But what I also learned that we were 3 people from Norway who attended that course. And I came into this course with 20 other culture workers from the Nordics and internationally. And my toolbox were smaller. My language to talk about climate change were smaller because we were from Norway. Because I was only used to talking about train rides and diesel generators at festivals. And then I started on this course and I had to start talking about fossil fuel disinformation, climate justice. And it was amazing. Check out this program. It's just, I'm very happy I went through it. So let's get back to culture-based climate action. Some of you who work with cultural heritage stuff do know about the Climate Heritage Network. They're doing an amazing job, together with Julie's Bicycle and others, in getting culture and cultural heritage up on the big climate policy agenda. And they succeeded. After 10 years of campaigning, it ended up with a ministerial meeting at COP28 with around 30 cultural ministers from all over the world. And I know Norway wasn't represented, but I think maybe Portugal were, EU were. Do you know if anyone from your countries participated? No. So this woman is the culture minister of Brazil. And she was one of the initiators to the cultural meeting and the ministerial meeting, together with one of the princes in UAE. And all these organizations have been participating to do this. But Margareth Menezes, the Minister of Culture in Brazil, she said at that meeting, "We will only achieve the results outlined in the Paris Agreement if we include culture, arts, heritage and creative industries as part of the response, generating conditions to transform thoughts into actions." And that's just beautiful. And what they're doing and what they did in Dubai is to create a path to get culture into the climate negotiations and to get it into an forhandlingspunkt, negotiation point, like a separate, unique part of the climate negotiations. Because culture has never been involved in the climate negotiations. There have been like thousands of fossil fuel lobbyists, or as I call them, Norwegians, at the climate conventions, but never anyone from the culture sector, not much. So what they're working on is a joint work decision to launch a process at the climate conventions on how to implement culture into climate policies. And for us who work with culture, a lot of this is, of course we need culture at those places. Of course we need to talk about cultural heritage and all of this, but it is quite new on this level. So in Dubai, culture were present really for the first time. And they had their first pavilion, entertainment and culture pavilion. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this because when I was depressed and my brother died and I understand the world is going to hell and we need a system change, I started finding inspiration from the people working on system change and culture on a really much more higher level than me. And the people behind the entertainment and culture pavilion, they do that. So they had a pavilion with a lot of cultural activities in Dubai. And if you want to read more about it, they have a beautiful report called Mind the Culture Gap, where the 4 co-founders, Gunjan, Kirsten, Samuel, and Pooja, has written about what an impact culture have made and can make on the climate conventions. This is the team. And they had co-hosted more than 126 events, 300 speakers. 70% of the speakers were Black, Indigenous, or people of color. A lot from the global south, and a lot of Indigenous peoples as well. Some of the focus were to end fossil fuels, and a focus on cultural heritage as well. And these are some of the key focus points for those kind of organizations and for the entertainment and culture pavilion. So last week I had a webinar, a web talk, with Gunjan, Samuel, and Kirsten about how they set up the entertainment and culture pavilion, and how we in the Nordics, in Norway, and also you guys, it is not specific for the Nordics, how we can get involved. Because what they really want is to get as many countries involved as possible, and as many people from the theater or museums or Arts Council involved as you can. And this is on our YouTube site. Klimakultur has a small video collection on YouTube. You can watch it there. So, but these are the kind of young people driving the change on cultural work and on sustainability work. And they want us to join, because we can't leave it to a bunch of 20-somethings to do the change. They really want us to join them. So we will learn how to do it. Some common points that I see concerning the work of Julie's Bicycle, of those kids at the Entertainment and Culture Pavilion, are these topics. It's capacity building on learning about the fossil fuel industry, it's about climate justice, it's about cultural heritage, and it's about representation. Because they are, of course, including a lot of climate activists as well. So instead of having climate activists ruining your cultural event, invite them. They are very nice people and they're very concerned about the earth. And sometimes I feel like if I'm going to do a climate activist action, I would glue myself to the Norwegian Minister of Culture, because no shame against her, but in Norway we can really make a difference with the climate crisis if we if we try. So, before we go to dinner, well, I stayed up so late last night because some of you had such a great party. So for me, no, I'm just kidding. I'm glad you had fun. So, a question I would like you to think about during lunch is, if we need a system change, can the system change the system? Because I don't know the answer to that. I'm thinking about that all the time. Because I know that us who have been working in the culture sector and who are working with the arts, I know we are changing. So how can we change with the system? And I'll spend my last 5 minutes. Maybe. Yes. Isn't it fantastic when it works?
Music has the power to unite people.
When it works too well. So, do you remember Greta Thunberg? Yes. So, when Greta Thunberg started the Schools for Friday strike, she started a global movement of young kids. And many of those kids around the world started organizing, and many of them started organizing in something called Climate Live, which is for music and festivals, and they're doing fantastic work on organizing and talking about fossil fuels and bringing in climate activists and all. And I'll finish this segment with a video they made last year with some representatives from all over the world. And I'm getting a lot of hope from seeing people working to change the system. And these kids are trying to change the system, and they need us as well. So have a great lunch. Think about, can the system be changed within the system? And let's hear what Greta Thunberg and the kids are saying.
Hello. Music has the power to unite people.
It's the one universal language on the earth.
We need to harness this power in one harmonious voice.
7.6 million took to the streets to demand climate action in September 2019.
But
leaders still fail to act
with the necessary urgency.
Millions of young people around the world are demanding change, and it's time to stop the apathy on climate change.
Can you hear us?
Time is running out for the planet as we know it.
so,
To change everything, we need everyone.
Youth climate activists supported by NGOs and music and events professionals are organising climate lives,
concerts
and
concrete action,
local outreach programs
to harness the power of music.
Because in many MAPA countries, it is illegal and so unsafe to strike.
As a result, fewer than 1% of the students in Africa attended a strike.
And globally,
not everyone wants to go to a protest, but everyone wants to go to a festival. So music is a powerful tool to spread awareness.
Can you hear us yet?
Following the model of school strikes, there will be both events on large and small scales across the globe.
Events are currently being planned in over 30 countries.
We have three main aims.
Engage a new audience to the climate movement.
Educate more people about the challenges faced today by those on the front lines of ecological breakdown.
Educate more people in Africa
about why they are today facing so many climate-related challenges.
As only 20% in Africa are climate literate.
Empower young people to pressure world leaders to take actions to combat the climate crisis.
We kicked things off last year with events in 27 countries.
World leaders, what progress will you deliver
over the next 12 months?
Before COP28 in November 2023.
And governments will be asked to commit to solutions.
And deliver the details, timing, and implementation of the Loss and Damage Fund.
To turn pledges into concrete actions.
Unlike the 100 billion a year by 2020 agreed in 2009.
It is crucial
for our future
that world leaders are more ambitious. We will ask them,
can you hear us yet?
Can you hear us yet?
The climate crisis hasn't stopped for COVID, and neither can we.
The crisis is happening now. It is here.
The leaders of the world aren't doing enough.
We just have to keep spreading the message.
Why wait? Why wait to act on this?
We can't do it alone.
We need you.
Please use your privilege and fight for us.
It is so vitally important that anyone with a platform of any size does whatever they can to support the youth-led climate movement.
World leaders, can you hear us yet?
The louder we shout and the more will be heard.
Can you hear us yet?
We can make a difference.
Together, we need to be united in one voice.
Make your voice counted too.
E quanto mais alto gritarmos, mais seremos escutados.
Can you hear us yet?
The young ones are speaking out. The elders are echoing the wisdom.
So join them as they raise awareness of the challenges faced today by people on the front line of ecological breakdown.
Please join us.
Junte-se a nós.
Por favor, junte-se a nós.
Camuizato kale antomwe.
S'il vous plaît, nous vous demandons, rejoignez-nous.
Sumama na kayo.
Peke yetu hatuwezi.
Wiai Chibatani.
Por favor, junte-se a nós.
Domeniul.
Wiai Tibatani.
Yerit Domulina.
Iko pia hisonyera anyị.
Rejoignez-nous.
Por favor, junte-se a nós.
ぜひご協力ください。
Please join us.
Enlace más.
¿Nos escuchan ahora?
Let's do this.
Thank you very much. So can you hear us? Excellent. We are one step closer to our dinner or lunch? Ish. Something with food, with good food. And don't forget, vegan,